Hello and welcome on our video lesson. Today we have a new topic, it's evolution of behavioral, and we will start from the Charles Darwin and his theory of evolution. And beyond the inspiring wildlife, the Galapagos Islands are known for their most famous visitor, Charles Darwin. But why did this naturalist visit it? Why the Galapagos are so important for Darwin and for all over the world? When Darwin visited for 5 weeks, he noticed that the same species differed between islands, particularly in features, and he observed the different and distinct shapes of the bricks that had over time adapted for life of each island, and he also found differences in turtles from islands to islands, and this observation provide foundation to this to his theory of evolution. And of course, the most important, this book for naturalists. And what we have, observation by Darwin in Galapagos, a lot of islands, how you see, and two important observation: plants and animals on the islands were similar to those on the nearby mainland, and phenotypic variation occurred between organisms from islands to islands. And what we have more information about the book, every biology and psychology student should read Charles Darwin's On the Origin of Species book, and consider it one of the greatest, if not the greatest, science book ever written. The opening chapter of the book talks at some length about pigeons breeding in Victorian England, and Victorians and other, Darwin noted, had bred many varieties of pigeons that looked and behaved dramatically differently from one another. Indeed, he himself was a pigeon breeder. I have kept every breed of pigeons I could perhaps obtain, and some of these various breeds have different color and very different in behavior, and very beautiful tails. And Darwin was fascinated by both morphological and behavioral varieties of the pigeons, and he said that tumbler pigeons seem to thought over themselves as they fly. Hoving pigeons can be realized long distance from home, yet somehow find their way back. And these morphological and behavioral varieties of pigeons were the product of many generations of breeding, and primarily by just pigeon breeders like Darwin was. And here is the reason for this seemingly old subject matter for the opening chapter in this very important book on the origin of species was strategic. Darwin was preparing the reader for what was to come. He knew that his readers would feel at home with the discussion of pigeon breeding, a popular pastime in Victorian days, if she could convince them that the process leading to extraordinary breeders of pigeons was similar to the process leading to new varieties of species in nature, his task would be a little similar. And the process leading to new pigeon breeds, like tumbler pigeon, homing pigeon, and so on, is called artificial selection, which is defined as the process of humans deliberately choosing certain varieties of an organism over others by implementing breeding programs that favor such varieties. And Darwin's discussion of artificial selection led directly to his introducing readers to his ideas of natural selection. We will talk about this natural selection at first, and how this Darwin came up with his theory of natural selection before even Mendel's work of genetics was disseminated. But Darwin didn't need to know about dance per se for his theory of work. All the needs he realized that behavioral traits that affect reproductive success will pass it from parents to offspring, and can consider any trait, height, weight, and even a fur color, and something else, so on. And instead of humans, the selective again allows the selective agent to be nature itself. When nature is the selective agent, traits, including behavioral traits, increase or decrease of frequency as a function of how well they suit organisms to their environments of one variety of the trait helps individuals survive and reproduce better in the environment than another variety, and if the trait can be passed down across generations, then natural selection will operate to increase this frequency over time. To see this, let's examine how natural selection might have favored pack hunting behavior in wild dogs. Modern wild dogs tend to hunt in pack, in a group of about 10 individuals, but that would a hypothetical strategy for the evolution of the trait hunt and packs look like, and here we can see this picture. Selective advantages of a trait. First, imagine a simplified scenario during the early stages of wild dog evolution in which two types of forages exist. One type is just hunt in packs, and one time that tended to hunt alone, and hunting behavioral alone or in a group represented one component of the wild dog's phenotype, and typically definite as observable properties of the organism. And of course now we have the tendency to hunting in a group, and what we have here. Darwin's theory of evolution by natural selection entails the following fundamental ideas. First, traits are often heritable, and the second, more offspring produced than the environment can support it, and offspring with the inherited characteristics allow them to best compete for limited resources. Here we see this in the first case, this means organisms have inherited traits for them to survive and reproduce in given environmental conditions, and when individuals have helpful characteristics produce more offspring and passes to the next generation. As the second one, thus competition occurs among the population for limited resources. This competition includes a lack to food resources, habitat, and mates, and because helpful traits are heritable, in which parents can leave these traits to the offspring, these traits then become more common in population. And the third, these individuals will then survive and have more offspring than those individuals with the less variation of compete. Here this is the end. Principles of natural selection. How does natural selection work in general? The first, natural selection depends on the environment. It does not favor the superior trait, but favors the traits that are beneficial for survival and reproduction in a specific area. and characteristics that are helpful in a particular habitat may be harmful to another. And the second, natural selection acts on the existing habitable traits. This heritable variance serves as the starting material for the natural selection to act upon. And the third, heritable variation comes from random changes or mutation from the genes, and the random mutation of gene result in new variation of the traits that are heritable. This is some kind of natural selection, but we will talk about all this principle and how natural selection operates. And now let's take a closer look. Once a trait is specified, the process of natural selection requires three first very important acts: variation of the trait, its different varieties of the trait, a mode of inheritance, a means by which the trait is passed down to the next generation, a fitness of the trait. Different varieties of the trait must affect reproductive success and or longevity differently. And so at first, for natural selection to act, there must be a variation of the trait under investigation. This variation includes color, weight, whereas characteristic, and for example the just time of reaction of the new object, for example, or just a variation like individuals and population, and exhibit variation of behavior and appearance. This variation, like in a color, like in moth having the similar colors to the tree bark, are better able to camouflage themselves than moths of a different one, and thus three-colored moths are likely to survive, reproduce, and pass in their genes. And one more, it's about the inheritance. Here we see these inherited traits that are advantageous for survival are more likely to be passed on the subsequent generation. I added a few links to a short video that will help you in future to understand this applies not only to animals but also in humans the same. For example, our ability to learn. Why is it easy for some people and hard to others? I think that not one will I think that no one will argue that for a person mental abilities are much more important and survival and success than just a color of the hair, for example, and beautiful hair color from native. And inherited ability to learn is very important at age after puberty period. Here we see this after 12 years and even more than 75 years right now where you are. This article contains information on how to improve your abilities, how to understand how you should to learn better, and how work to your brain and how we can to prove this work. And new one, fitness consequences for the trait. Different varieties of the trait must affect reproductive success and longevity, and definitely, and the odds that two behavioral variants would have the exact same effect of the reproductive success are very low, less than 1%, but that over evolutionary time even small differences in reproductive success can have important consequences on the evolution of the behavior. Here we see this experimental work of ethology has found that fitness differences in between behavioral variants, and all the two behavioral variants would have the exact same effect of reproductive success are very low. How say that have see this, but this it's the number of generations that matters. It's going to take a long time for mammals, especially. Have you see this first generation, the third generation? It takes about 2 years for one generation, but which is why genetic scientists prefer fruit flies, because one generation just take only 5 days per generation. It's very easy, and fruit flies family Drosophila is a classic model organism for laboratory research in genetic science. The time of from the times of Thomas Morgan, and did much of the basic knowledge about heredity and genetic comes from laboratory studies of these insects. But we talk about animals, more big animals and more smart animals, and we have the high rate of population growing. Populations produce more offspring each year than the environment can support, and leading to the strategy of resources. Strategy of surviving. Each generation experiences certified mortality, significant mortality, as members of the population compete for the limited and in natural availability of natural resources, and then the surviving individuals can pass on the characteristic to the next generation, and most of the springs consider to overproduce. For example, fish lay millions of eggs at one time, and only 1 or 100 of these eggs can be survive, and it's just be adult. Here this is just high fitness and low fitness generation. We will talk about this strategy in future very soon, but now we're in a reproductive advantages. It means by which the visible expressed characteristic of the organism can change over time, and this have the advantages traits are passed along to offspring and confer reproductive benefits in a population. Having a favorable trait, having positive traits means more of these traits are present in the following generation. And for example, like we see, the peacock has a long tail to attract mates, giving them reproductive advantages. And here this is just a camouflage gives survival advantages, like in here. And all generations have this the same, and here this is kind of illustration from the Darwin's strategy book. And new one, it is an illustration of Darwin. We will finish this term and start to study the principle of evolution in general. What are the 4 principles of evolution? How are these principles being carried out in natural selection? The 4 principles of evolution by Charles Darwin, presented below. It's competition, and you know that it can be interspecies competition, and even here we see this inter and extra competition from the different kinds of animals. The next one, heritable difference, and here we see this just light colored mole and dark colored one. Like in results, we have the next principles of evolution, and here we see this one more principle, and the scent with modification, like in turtles in Galapagos Islands. These turtles have the different length of the neck. And types of natural selection, we will start from the stabilization selection. It happens when the natural selection favors the intermediate states of character against the extreme character variation to survive. Like for example, the height of the plants. The small plant receives less sunlight compared to the tall plant. However, tall plants are vulnerable to wind disruption, and given these two pressure, the plant will maintain the median height, median size. The next one, the directional selection. Directional selection, it occurs when a single phenotype favors and causes the frequency to shift into one direction. And before the Industrial Revolution, these moths are naturally light in color to blend in light-colored trees and lynches. And however, when its air start to be dark and trees dark in color, the light-colored moths on these trees become vulnerable for predators to spot, like very, very visible. And next one, that's diversifying on disruptive selection. This type of selection removes an individual from the center of the phenotypical distribution, or occur when natural selection favors both extreme conscious variation. In this selection, the distribution become bimodal. Two extreme variation will become more common as an extremely lead to two new distinct species, like in this case types with the crab. And we know more and more kinds of selection. I just don't stop on these variants. Sexual selection, where organism that is more capable and secure mates is said to be more fitted to the environment. And one more, this predator-prey selection. It's very important to be invisible for predator, like in here in these photos. Over time, the process of natural selection can change the organism to make them better predators and more defensive prey. And here we see the small one, kin selection. As you remember, the bees. This type of natural selection involves altruistic behavioral, and in general, here we see this. No matter what life strategy we choose, if it is successful, then there will be population growth. We have already made these theories. The most notable example of life history theories is the air selection, based on their work on the island big geography. And here this key represents the instinct rate of natural increase of the offsprings, and key refers to the carrying capacity of the environment. That is the maximum density of which a population is able to exist in a given environment. And here reproductive strategy, like a key selected species, also called key strategies, and species choose population fluctuate at all carrying capacity of the environment in which they rise. And is this reproduction. Early reproduction, many offspring, little parent care, like in insects and many plants. And key selection, like in mammals, later production, few offspring, and invest a lot of time, a lot of raising offspring, like in primates, like in a coconut. And here we see this tendency, and just in this scheme, like who likes like in the graphic, these two reproductive strategy, that is if you build a graph. And here this is like waves, very height in selected opportunity species, and a key selection like very low, and one more life history strategies. with a key selection. And here this is the examples of this selection, you know, because we previous our practical was about this, just these strategies, and very short table. If you want, it is a better. But you know that key selected adapted species with a long life and slower growing, so this animal very big size. And even true, but will live long life. If we compare with different species of animals, and we, of course, we are predators. I have one more kind, just examples, some more examples of this strategy for different kinds, not only for fishes or just mammals. And here we are. Darwin stated the following in support of natural selection: natural resources are limited. Of course, limited is not, and take a lot of time. And in order to understand this issue, let's try to divide all animals according to their classification. Just classification like wild animals and domesticated animals. Here we see this. Humanity takes matters into its own hands. Artificial selection. For more than 10,000 years, humans have used the process of artificial selection to shape the way that animals and plants look and the way that animals behave. We select some varieties of corn, for example, and rice over others, and systematically plant the seeds. And when we choose horses and are faster and more agile, generation after generation, we are involved in artificial selection. The same can be said of our systematic preference for breeding certain varieties of dogs, cats, cattle, pigs, sheep, and many others, including the pigeon breeds that so observed Darwin in his books. And here we see these animals in how long time it take. Just about dogs, you can find this information in different sites. About you see this 9,000 years sheep and pigs and other cattle, and have the 4,000 years oxen and cats 3,000 years. About the Egypt cats are sacred animals and are even mummified in the millions folk stories. And here horses at the same time, and silk moss, of course, for have the silk. And what we have camels about the same times, and even poultry. And here was this elephants about 2,000 years ago, and honeybees not so long, even not 1,000 years. We have these insects, and almost not so long time it's rabbits since Roman times, and even a hamster. It's only 100 years. Female hamster with 12 young is captured in Syria, taken to laboratory investigation, and we use these animals in this time too. And different definitions like this for all spices and location where it takes a time. I don't know about Ukraine, horses, and for 1,000 years here maybe, I don't know. And here this is domestication of farm animals. Many species were domesticated and survive today in the range and grasslands of their wild ancestors, and they have adapted to the ecological condition for today, but some of them just invisible now, and just transform and in many species, but not the native. As we have already said, it was not the selection of generations that need to be spent a lot of time, and it was painstaking fine work, and it's take a long work, and now all those belong to species Canis familiaris, and more than 400 different breeds we have now, but it takes painstaking fine work. Just look at these breeds of dogs. This work has been done all over the world, all over, not only in Europe and in North America, China, India, and we have now we will talk about dogs today a lot, and here is a selective breeding of wolves. And here this is different. All these dogs can only have long fur, for example, for one species, but it's the program. There is a certain algorithm, program of action to improve certain qualities of the animal, of the body, and here is example of herding capabilities in a dogs. I like this breed of dogs. It's very smart dog, but we will talk about different breeds of dogs today, or an example of hunting dogs like English Fox Terrier, and here we see this specific function and these traits. For example, in this dog, like long hair, long legs, or large muscles, for example, here we see this variation in differences among individuals, inheritance, selection, and of course the time for all generation. It takes long time, and here we can find the different breeds of dogs and 7 major types of dog groups explained. Only 7 groups, and sometimes we have the podcast of these groups, but in general we have working groups dogs, and we hunt dogs, and we have toy dogs, and terrier dogs, and sporting dogs, and non-sporting dogs, and in general we have this only 200 year work, we have all this population of different breeds. I will leave you some interesting links, and you have already seen this slide about breeds of dogs in different countries, and here we see this one. You have already seen these links on this site. You can choose the right breed of dog for yourself. If you want to very active dog, if you want to very good runner dog, and for example you just want to dig something, you can take this just the breeds. It's selective breeding, and for example hunters in almost 200 years ago need to hunting dogs that was big, strong, fast, and even aggressive. If you want aggressive dog, you should to breed it. However, no dog like this succeed in that time, and the new of 2 species of dogs with some of these are qualities. You can they somehow combine the 2 in 1? Of course you can this do, and just take a Mastiff and American Bulldog, and you just do the Bull Mastiff, big, strong, fast, and even aggressive dog. As you noticed, most breeds have a history of 200 years, like this Bull Mastiff, for example. But it's not all. At first glance everything was simple, but not. Why use selective breeding? Humans use selective breeding, which takes advantage of naturally occurring genetic variation to pass wanted traits in the next generation. of organisms that way can humans selectively breed plants or animals. And here we see this. Its disadvantage this is that it takes a long time, but we always want to do something quickly. We have changed everything so much that it's rather difficult to find progenitors. This is provided that it still exists at all. But two types of selective breeding we have, and we discussed hybridization and breeding. Hybridization crossing dissimilar individuals to bring together the best of the both worlds. And American botanist Luther Burbank selective breed 700 plants called varieties. Many varieties can be found in your supermarket and breed for size, disease resistance, flowering, taste, color, and variety of this reason based on the preference. In inbreeding, crossing breeds of individuals with similar characteristics. Maintenance here is a breed, but has a lot of risk increase the chance of mutation, since individuals are very genetically similar to each other. And here is and breeding. In breeding, dogs breeds are maintained by inbreeding, and here is the best of the best. We take the best of the best and do something, but sometimes we have just a mutation, and it's not very good, and also can be very dangerous in this case. And here designer diggers, and here we see like an example in dogs. Here this is just we take some and do the hybrid, and sometimes inbreeding. Hybridization occurs in both plants and animals, and curing hybrid plants is different than creating hybrid animals, and animals can be sterile, very often sterile. If the chromosome number is odd, or if there are too many mutations that occur when they breed naturally, rarely occur in the wild. And plants can be bred easily, but always can be sterile, like just a generation of the first level can be can work be bigger and, for example, sweeter, but then generation can just absolutely different and absolutely I don't know, even it's can't to eat. And many crops today are hybrids, of course, can sometimes occur naturally in the wild. But here we see this is genetically engineered hybrid plants. For example, you have probably eaten many these hybrid plants, even without realizing what is this. It's very popular. The just corn, modern corn was selectively bred from the chosen at least 6,000 years ago. Here is this. And this and very sweet, of course. And for example, this some fruits I even don't know what it is the name of these fruits. I don't know this hybrid fruits at all. And here we see this for animals too: horse plus donkey. It's mule, but the mule always sterile. And we don't have this kind of animals in general, but like in this case, red wolf, it is a normal spice hybridization. In the wild, it a special kind of animals like a hybrid. And here we see the sterile one animal, tiger plus lion, liger, but this liger can to give the offspring, absolutely sterile. Maybe it is good, but the next one, it is, as you notice, there are risk of mutation, and sometimes a mutation is good, but sometimes not. But it is unsuccessful to act too radically. as in this case. At first it was believed that a little radiation would not hurt. It's very okay to use the X-rays to laboratory tests to have previously shown that it's not very bad to use for corn X-ray and little radiation. It's very dangerous, and sometimes this mutation turn on to speed up evolution. It's not easy to understand it, but now we have a lot of this transgenic fruits and vegetables in general. We will talk about this, and if you think that is all over, then this is a mistake. Transgenic products are reality, and here is the link to a video. Here with this, the link to the video Principles of Genetic Engineering, about the principles. Like we take the some genes and use for creating new fruits, like in here. Addition to gain two or genes from the sexual and non-comparable species to create a new strain with the selected traits. For example, to take some fruits to move genes in another, and we have the third. So it is a mutation, like in a case of radiation. It's not the end of the story. And here we see this genetic engineering. Genetic engineering just it show we need to take DNA and isolate fragment for this for his device, for his in a gel, and just use this gel we can to do something with this DNA. The desired fragment can be multiplied by creating millions of copies, and we use these copies to transform some organism and, for example, some fruits, and you can increase these fragments into different DNA. Just insert these fragments. So it turned out to create a bacterium that produce a protein hormone insulin. It is cool. We use this insulin like a recombinant human insulin. It's absolutely very the same. It's protein, and we treat some diseases with this insulin. But when we take this for strawberry, for example, we often freeze food. And the problem is that many of them look bad after defrozen. This is because the melting crystals like shape, and they destroy cell membranes, and after that all liquid from the cell move out. But scientists took the gene from the fish that is able to stay alive after a deep freeze. And here we can find here the link, and even I want that you just ask you, please watch the video Goldfish in a liquid nitrogen. Yes, almost very much kinds of fish can live after freezing, and might this gene move this gene in a strawberry. And what we have the strawberry which don't damage the eyes and looks very good after the freezing. And here we see the genetically modified animals. Yes, we have a lot of animals now which can have the big meat, big muscle mass, and be very quick growing, like a salmon. And we even have the strange cases, for example, like silk in a milk. What is this? What's the biosteel made from? Like a steel, like spiders need what process produce biosteel. Here we can find this kind of growth. just researcher increased a spider's germline silk gene into the goat's DNA, in which way that the goats would make the silk protein only in the milk. This silk milk could then be used to do something very strong, so like a material called biosteel. But it's not all. Sometimes I want to say right now that such eaten strawberries or this milk will not affect our DNA in any way. In the intestinal tract, we just have a special enzyme that destroys foreign DNA, and it is definitely safer than drinking the milk of hormone-stimulated cows. Or just here we see this chicken. Just take just a 56 days, no, it's 42 days it takes to do the animal, almost 2 kilos or 4 kilos, for example. Just take about 50 years differences. Their hormones persist in the products, and it's very dangerous for humans, but DNA can't move inside of our body cells. One thing is clear: GMO foods help overcome hunger all over the world, and it is our reality. And just take this article and to read the text. But some countries just many people opposite, and some countries just close the products with genetic modified organism. And here we see this a lot of biotech cotton. It's and a lot of different beans, and of course corn. It's very much produce corn, but sometimes many people opposite. Of course, they like it or not. This is your reality, our reality, and we are studying animal behavior. In this case, I want to prepare you for the future, of course, and it's inevitable. You know about electronic artificial intelligence like GTP chats, you know. But how about the smart mouse? For example, here we see the smart mouse biological model engineered to the overexpress some receptor in the synaptic pathways, and this makes the mouse learn faster like javelins through their lives. It's the future of our behavioral. Who knows, maybe soon along with the statements about cloning a cat, we'll see an announcement about a chess competition among cats. Here we see this. Okay, it's all for today, and here we can find all links in the description to this video. As usual, we can find information in the books, in our main book, Animal Behavioral, Chapter 6, Evolution, and here we can find the second one, Animal Behavioral, Chapter 2, Evolution and Behavioral. See you later, bye bye.